Hello and welcome to Moderate Fantasy Violence, a podcast about pop culture and the world around it. I'm Nick.
And I'm Alastair.
And this fortnight we'll be revisiting two big-name current sci-fi franchises, both returning for a Season 2. First up, we've got Doctor Who, doing its second run with Ncuti Gatwa as the 15th Doctor, and then we've got the second and last season of Andor, the Star Wars series acting as a prequel to the widely beloved Rogue One film. But before we get into all those Season 2s, Alastair, what else have you consumed?
So I usually come recommending a recent film or something similar, but this time I've come to discuss a classic movie that I've watched recently. There's a very specific reason why I watched this film, which we might unpack in a bit, but I'm here to recommend Breathless, which is a French film from 1960. It's widely regarded as a classic, an early film of the French New Wave, directed by Jean-Luc Godard. Yeah, the plot follows a small-time car thief who steals a car and, in the ensuing shenanigans, accidentally shoots a police officer. He then links up with his previous girlfriend, an American living in Paris, to convince her to go on the run. So it's a sort of crime film, but it's more of a, mood piece or sort of like character study. There's not a lot of plot, really, and most of it actually kind of happens in the first little bit, but it is a really interesting, very stylistic film. It's one of those films when you watch it, you can kind of see like, I see how this has influenced loads of things that came after it. This is kind of falling into place because it really captures that, I feel, very iconic, cool 60s look. I think it's like something about the fashion, the style, and the constant smoking. So it is a very cool French film from the 60s, which I can recommend.
Smoking is very cool. Yeah, this is one of those ones that I've sort of heard of in terms of it being a classic, but especially because it's a classic from sort of outside the Hollywood genre section, very rarely enters my field of vision.
Yeah, it's definitely more of an art house classic, the sort of thing that gets revivals at the BFI or the Rio Cinema and things like that. Yeah, it's although it's normally a crime romance film, it's more of a stylistic piece. But yeah, it's one of those things. It is clearly very, very influential. Jean-Luc Godard, obviously great director, done a huge career with lots of great films in it. Yeah, and I guess there's something really specific about the era it captures that I really liked. Kind of like these sort of small bohemian flats they live in Paris and they're constantly hanging out in, or I guess it's the sort of thing that the era it captures is very stylish in itself, so everything appears cool and French, I guess. Like even as they're walking down the roads of Paris, all the cars just parked up. It just looked kind of like really cool and retro and classics. I suppose they were just the cars of the time. I doubt they had the budget to get in cars that were cool at the time. I suppose it's not necessarily, I guess, how it was made. It's the kind of sense it imbues of this artistic lifestyle of sort of low-level crime. I suppose, the guy's just sort of a bit of a car thief and a swindler. Although, he did kill a policeman, but that's sort of an accident. There's lots of sex in it. It's not particularly explicit because it is 1960, but there's lots of people discussing sex and lovers and lying and hanging out in bed and things like that. So it's got it's got this very specific style to it. Obviously it's a black and white film, but it just really looks beautiful in black and white. It's the lighting and the framing and the camera shots. So I guess it's used classic in that way.
Yeah, that's very much the impression I would have got from it, from the vague cultural impression I have of this film. So what did drive you to bring it up then? Are they making a sequel or a remake with Chris Pratt?
I really hope not, although, again, nothing's past it at this point. The thing that led me to it is that, as you say, it's got this, it's this film that everyone's very much aware of, and it's got, quite a distinct style, or at least it's a encapsulation of a style, and this is actually links to something very contemporary, a long way from Jean-Luc Godard, the French New Wave in 1960s. I've been watching a lot of YouTube recently. Turns out there's good stuff on YouTube, yeah.
Oh, are you a meninist now?
Yeah, sorry, this is what we've come to break to you on the podcast. We're changing directions.
Yep. Meninist fantasy violence from now on.
Well, at least we didn't have to change the logo because it's still MFV. And no, I've been looking at lots of vloggers on YouTube, interestingly. People who show their own life, especially in an interesting or stylistic way. And there's especially one YouTuber I really like called Life of Risa. And she just kind of vlogs about her life, meeting her boyfriend, working on her channel, sorting out her room and things like that. But she's got a really distinct visual style, which I like. She's really thought about the craft of filmmaking and things like that. And trying to craft story and with a specific style. And then I suddenly realized, and there's a few other YouTubers, she's probably the best example, and I said this style is very early 2000s American indie film. It just really captures that without being too on the nose. But the films and the YouTube videos she makes are very reminiscent of Wes Anderson. Not quite as stylized as him, but there's definitely an influence there. Films like Little Miss Sunshine, I think like Captain Fantastic, a lot of those films, a bit Coen Brothers. And, it seems to be quite popular across YouTube, considering that Life of Risa, I assume she's in her early 20s, probably would have been too young to remember these films when they came out. A lot of them came out when I was at university or around that time. And it seems to be quite pervasive on YouTube, this style. And what made me think is like, what other styles are there that could be adapted to this? And it made me think like, why is everyone just doing the same style on YouTube? And I thought, well, what would be a different style? And I thought, well, French New Wave, obviously. I watched Francis Ha recently, which is, a film that is very influenced by the French New Wave, set in New York. Again, young people hanging out. It's one of Greta Gerwig's early films, if not her breakthrough film. And an early breakthrough performance from Adam Driver in it. That's also a good one. It's a very specific filmmaking vibe, but it's yet to make it to YouTube. So I think there's something interesting going on there.
Yeah, I can see what you mean. Yeah, the certain sort of quirky 2000s American, not indie, but slightly off from mainstream style of film. The sort of thing that was vaguely predominant until superheroes arrived and dragged us back to action blockbusters. Are we talking Zach Braff in Garden State, maybe? Yeah,
that's similar sort of thing. That's like, another thing. Probably more towards the mainstream end, but definitely that whole era. I think, this was all partly caused because there's an interesting phenomenon. In the late 90s, there was a huge expansion in American cinema building. They built these vast cinema complexes, and Hollywood was struggling to catch up with the demand for screening films to make them. So they just started churning out all sorts of stuff and throwing money at people just because they needed to make loads and loads of films. And it created a period of great creative freedom. 1999 is heralded as a peak year in Hollywood. It's the year that had The Matrix, Being John Malkovich, and Fight Club in it, and other things as well. The Coen Brothers had a sort of imperial phase around that time. So there was a real explosion of cinema in the very late 90s, early aughts, which I think is, very influencing culture now, because I guess, unlike people like me, I was just really getting into film around that time. I saw The Matrix in the cinema and it really blew my mind, and then got into seeing a lot of films and stuff. Gladiator again around that time and things like that, and maybe a bit earlier Gladiator. But I assume that although I was very much there for that, the current generation of young creators kind of grew up in it. It's just sort of a bit before their time. I guess the way we relate to maybe the culture of the late 80s, I suppose, things like that. And there was, when I was at uni, there was a huge wave of 80s revivalism and 80s nostalgia. So I guess that's what's going on now, but we're seeing it in YouTube, so things like that. To be fair, they do 2000s indie nights and stuff to refer to the music rather than the films.
Yeah, I can see why someone doing a YouTube vlog would land on the sort of quirky 2000s film indie style. It's very, that sort of look at me, I'm slightly offbeat and quirky thing is very much the vibe a lot of them are going for.
Yes, exactly, and it works really well on YouTube. It's nice, it's friendly, it's approachable.
Yeah, exactly. It's light, it's fun, it's upbeat.
Yeah, even it's kind of Wes Anderson, but it steers away from the darker bits of Wes Anderson. Lest we forget that Royal Tenenbaums has a suicide in it and things like that. There's quite a lot of death and things like that, and sadness in a lot of his films. They kind of steer clear in that. Not there aren't an emotional arc. What I like about Life of Risa and things like that, she's clearly thought about the emotional arc for each film, even though it's a simple thing like going to the airport to meet her boyfriend. It's a real emotional arc you can get invested in, usually done quite subtly through visual storytelling and things like that. But I guess it's not as heavy as some of those films could get. Again, I mentioned Little Miss Sunshine is a film pretty much about death and suicide, as well as a heartwarming family road trip film. But I was wondering what would a new wave influenced YouTuber be like? It'd be interesting. Maybe it's something the algorithm would just instantly hate and then you would never get anywhere. I guess the point is there's more than one style that we can excavate. So I thought this is an alternative. So I guess if anyone's interested in specific cinematic styles, I'd recommend going back and looking at French New Wave or Italian neorealists. I guess the Italian neorealists are just way too gritty, I suppose, to work in a YouTube setting. But hey, they were very influenced by the Second World War, so maybe if a huge war, that's what we're going to get. I don't know.
Having looked at the news recently, you might be in luck.
Might be in luck there, yeah. Great golden age of realistic filmmaking. Cinema verite during wars. Great. Let's not make jokes about that in case it all comes true. So I think there's a lot to think about there. Definitely check out Breathless. Check out Life of Risa if you're interested in someone being creative with vlogging. So I've been diving into the media of the past and the present. So Nick, what have you been up to since we last spoke?
Yeah, I will be bringing us slightly closer to the present day, though not completely up to date. I have been reading a run of Batman comics. This is the run on Detective Comics, which is the original Batman ongoing series, by the writer Ram V, and a series of artists including Stefano Raffaele, Gilliam Murch, and a few others, and also with backup stories written and drawn by a range of creators, including Cy Spurrier, whose work we've covered on here before, Caspar Wingard, the artist of the Power Fantasy, and yeah, just a lot of recent cool artists and writers. And yeah, this is a Batman story called Gotham Nocturne, in which a family who claim to have an ancient ownership of Gotham arrive to take back the city and also bring back with them a bunch of weird demons called Asthma, who possess the people of Gotham and, of course, eventually the Batman, and cause havoc across the city and among the regular rogues gallery. The main, I guess, selling point here is that Ram V has said in interviews that he's vaguely trying to present this in the form of a grand opera, in the form of everything just gets increasingly ridiculous and dramatic, and just builds to this massive, steady crescendo of chaos. It's quite a sort of slow-paced, atmospheric story over the course of about 30 issues, I think, 30-something issues, and it does have a lot of very nice atmospheric art. If you have 5 minutes on Google, feel free to look up the covers to the Gotham Nocturne storyline in Detective Comics, because they're absolutely gorgeous. They're by Evan Cagle, I think, and yeah, some gorgeous painted covers by him. He doesn't do any interiors, but yeah, the covers are absolutely beautiful, and there's a lot of really nice interior art as well. So yeah, I have been reading A Load of Batman.
Okay, cool. That does sound really, really interesting. Yeah, certainly something with a lot of style. I'm just Googling actually them myself to have a look, and like, oh wow, yeah. Very, almost like sort of watercolour type thing. Yeah, there's definitely a really distinctive visual style to there. So yeah, which really suits Batman. I guess the thing that I found really interesting about this is, so this is actually, a fantasy horror story? Because I guess maybe the take we've got on Batman, certainly in film and TV, is that, yeah, this is usually a world without magic in it. Leave aside the Justice League crossover ones, how magic is, I know Aquaman, for example, but anyway, they're usually like more, I don't know, yeah.
More down to earth, more crimey, yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm looking for. So yeah, but this is actually one where they're deliberately going in a fantasy direction. It's not something where it's revealed at the end it was all just a hallucinogenic gas or something.
No, it's all sincere. I mean, you could get a bit of this stuff into Batman. I mean, the character Ra's al Ghul, who has been a Batman villain since, I think, the 70s, has always had a sort of edge of magic mysticism about him. So it's always possible to get a bit of this stuff in, and yeah, Ram V's just leaning very, very far into it here. I think generally there's like 2 Batman comics going at any one time, at least, well, to be honest, there's usually about 10, but the 2 main sort of ongoing series are Batman and Detective Comics, and normally the main Batman comic does a slightly more straightforward Batman story, which does normally lean in a sort of semi-realistic crime direction, and then you have Detective Comics, which can sometimes go a bit more weird. And yeah, here we're going, in this case, far off into the direction of magic.
Well, that's good. I mean, they've given these creators like license to do what they want to do with both story and creativity, and it sounds like it's worked well for them if they've created something that's very good.
Yeah, Ram V's always good. I think, did we read These Savage Shores, either on or off the podcast?
Yes, I think we read it off the podcast. It was a birthday gift that you gave me. I can't remember if I discussed it in the recommendation section, but it was definitely a gift you gave me, and the name did sound very familiar when you mentioned him before.
Yeah, Ram V kind of broke through with These Savage Shores. That was his big sort of indie calling card, which led to him getting a lot of work at the big superhero publishers, and yes, he's made his way to Batman.
Yeah, it doesn't get bigger than Batman.
Yeah, I guess technically it's the kind of the second Batman title, but kind of feel like someone like Ram V might be more interested in doing this sort of more personal, more specific story that he can lean more into his interests in, rather than having to do the main Batman comic, where I think he'd have to go a bit more big, superhero, straightforward.
Yeah, it does sound very, very good. Yeah, and then so it looks like they've come with an interesting take on the story with these, I guess, yeah, you've got the existing established Batman characters being possessed by these demons. Are the characters bringing the demons, are they new characters that Ram V has created, or is he digging up something from Batman lore?
I'm not an expert in Batman lore, but I believe they are new. The family are called Orgham. I think there's a vague implication that they're really, really distant ancestors of the Arkham family who created Arkham Asylum and who were involved even further back in the origins of Gotham itself. So there's a lot of, again, leaning into the stuff that Ram V's often interested in. There's a lot of sense of myth. There's a lot of, stories with a vaguely fairy tale-y or mythological angle that may or may not be entirely literally true going on.
Yeah, I mean, that's a bit Lovecraft. I mean, Lovecraft's a big influence on Batman. I mean, Arkham is the town that most Lovecraft stories take place in. I'm sure it's a direct reference to Lovecraft, the Arkham Asylum.
Yeah, I imagine it probably is, yeah. And yeah, there's been a lot of stories about the mythology of Arkham Asylum over the years. Most famously, there was the graphic novel Arkham Asylum by Grant Morrison and Dave McKean. I think Ram V's kind of got around that by going even further back and throwing it this more vague, ancient time frame. And yeah, it's really enjoyable. It's got a lot of scope, I guess. He's very interested in the broader universe and the broader characters around Batman. Like, because it's 30 issues, but it's not actually that complicated, involved, and dense a storyline. This isn't as plotty as a lot of superhero comics are. He did this story in 30 issues. He could probably have done it in like 12 or something, to be honest, if he'd really wanted to just slam the plot. But there's a lot of focus here on atmosphere and character work and going off with side characters to see how they're being affected by this stuff. It's got a bit of a contemplative pace, which if you Google opinions on it, you can find people who want a slightly more superhero-y, straightforward take on Batman finding it a bit boring. But yeah, I enjoyed it.
I think you need to give this kind of story, or the plot of this kind of story, like room to breathe. There needs to be room to like enjoy the stylisticness. I mean, that's not too different from what we were just talking about with Breathless. It's not got a lot of plot, but it's got this real sense of style that the film has space for that style to kind of fill and things like that, which is also something, again, like Coen Brothers. The film of Fargo probably has about as much plot as the average CSI episode, but it's more than twice as long. And again, that's a sort of this kind of giving stories space to have style and mood. Again, is something that Life of Risa and stuff are using in vlogging, which is why she's good at it, because unlike most YouTubers who just like boom, 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 let's go through it quickly, she's giving things space. And I feel that's the mark of a good, talented creator, that they can give their story room. They don't need to have like something grabbing your attention every few seconds. They have space for this like style and mood to develop.
Well, yeah, and obviously it's in some ways a contrast to what is often done in superhero comics, especially nowadays as they get more expensive, and I think creators maybe feel a bit more obligated to have each issue full of plot, so you feel like you've got your £5 worth or whatever. But yeah, no, Ram V's very much just doing it his own way here, and yeah, it's another good work. One day I'm sure this will be collected into some sort of gigantic hardcover omnibus, which will be a good read. It's also got a decent side role from Azrael in it, which I did enjoy as a 90s fan.
Yeah, I suppose, yeah, something that will be like, yeah, collected into a Batman compendium to sit on the shelves next to the famous Batman compendiums, you know, yeah, like Killing Joke or Nightfall and the rest.
Nightfall, No Man's Land, Contagion, Cataclysm, all those epic stories, some of which are good.
Yeah. Well, it's good that there's still new classic Batman being created, or that, like, you know, people are coming with interesting takes, because it must be hard to write Batman, you know, in a continuous, because this is the original DC run, so I guess it's a plot that stretches back to the 30s or something like that. So it must be hard to come up with new ideas and new takes with that history.
No, this is Detective Comics in the late thousands. They're in, I think Ram V's run was something like the 1070s to the early 1090s. So yeah, it's been going a while.
I mean, it must be difficult for a creator to come up with something that's distinct and interesting and new without shooting off totally into the weeds and just leaving what exists already behind. You know, something that feels authentically Batman but also isn't a story that's been done before.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of takes on Batman out there at any given time, I think. DC do like to publish a lot of Batman, and yet still, you know, because there's so much of it already, it is, as you say, hard to find a unique angle that doesn't just feel like, here you go, here's some more Batman content, enjoy. And, you know, it's impressive that Ram V has found a way to do something distinctive that doesn't feel exactly like anything that's been done before. So yeah, if you fancy an interesting Batman story, then this is now available. It's now out in its entirety, and because I've waited 6-7 months to read it, it is also all on the DC Unlimited app, which is where I read it. So you can get it there, or I think it's all out in collections now, or nearly all out.
Next up, this episode, we will be discussing the new season of Doctor Who. The Doctor meets Nurse, Belinda Chandra, and they go off on an outer space adventure. However, when the Doctor tries to take Belinda home, they cannot return to present-day Earth. They then travel through time and space, looking for a way back to the present. We have seen this complete season from the BBC. Nick, what did you think of it?
Yeah. All in all, I thought this was a decent season with a strong sort of basic standard of storytelling. Pretty much every episode is decent, and, you know, for a season of Doctor Who to not have a crap episode, that's impressive in itself, that each episode is either good or very good. So yeah, all in all, I think they've done a good job of building on the first season. Ncuti Gatwa remains a fun presence and brings something unique to the role in this sort of emotive joy. I think they try a bit harder this year to give him sort of regular Doctor Who stories rather than the maybe slightly more manic and off-the-wall stuff they did last season. But then again, it also feels slightly tighter and more polished in the writing. So yeah, Yeah, not bad. There is some interesting stuff in the finale, which does make me wonder where it's all going next, but trying not to get too distracted by the cliffhanger. I do think the actual series was pretty good, yeah.
Well, I'm sure we'll come to that, but yeah, probably best to take in the wide-angle view on Doctor Who first. And yeah, agree with what you said, especially on Ncuti Gatwa. I think he's great in the role. He's got his own take on it. Again, that as we were similar to what we were saying about Batman, he's got his own take on this long-established character that feels unique as well as being in the sort of spirit of the character. I think maybe overall I preferred the previous season. I thought there was maybe some stronger episodes. There wasn't like one episode that really blew me away this time, like the Bubble World one in the last one or things like that. But that's, I know, possibly damning with faint praise. There are definitely some good episodes that I really liked. I really liked Belinda Chandra as a character. Yeah, she was really good. A great main character to have alongside the Doctor. And I like this kind of concept of they're taking these readings throughout time and space to get home. So each time they land somewhere, they've got to take the readings and then get caught up in something. So yeah, overall, Rusty Davis does it again, and certainly a big improvement on the Chibnall years.
Yeah, Varda Setu's very good as Belinda, and I think, considering she doesn't actually get that much time, because we're still on 8-episode series, which really isn't quite long enough, to be honest. But she does do a good job in the space she has. I think possibly with this series, in the weird situation where I think the general standard might be slightly higher, but also you're right, there's maybe not as many standout episodes. I think there were a couple of episodes last year, like probably I'd point to the Dot and Bubble one you mentioned, and the Stephen Moffat one with the landmine, as being particularly genuinely excellent episodes.
Yes, they were both very good.
I'm not sure there's a genuinely excellent episode here, but there's a lot of very good ones. And last season also had some episodes that completely bombed for me, and I don't think there was that much of that here. Or at least
that's true.
Fell apart at the end. And most of these are pretty solid. I don't know, it did feel very much back into the territory of, yep, this is Russell T Davies Doctor Who. I know what this is like. I've seen 5 seasons plus multiple specials of this before, and there is a part of me that thinks that makes it a bit, sometimes lacks freshness. I do think that for all that I respect Russell T Davies a lot as a talent and as someone who is genuinely doing this for good reasons, there must be someone other than him and Moffat who can do this job. At some point there has to be someone else, surely. The future must arrive at some stage. And I do sometimes start to wonder exactly where that is.
Yeah. I mean, that also relates to the ending as well. But I don't know, I guess let's not talk quite about the cliffhanger ending yet. You are right that Rusty Davis does it very well. This does have the feel of his episodes, which are good and fun, and each one has a good emotional moment and things like that. He is good at always finding an emotional bit to grab onto, which is it's been a consistent hallmark of his time as running the Doctor Who, both in the past and now. I think possibly the best example of this is, I think it's the second episode when they had Alan Cumming as the cartoon character that comes to life. And there's this quite silly meta bit when they get out of Doctor Who and end up meeting some Doctor Who fans who then turned out are also fictional constructs or something like that. And it's kind of daft. And I think if anyone else had written this sort of meta bit of the Doctor being a character or whatever in the real world for a bit, that it would have just come across as probably quite cringe. But the thing about Rusty Davis is, even though I don't think it 100% works, he manages to find the emotional core of this silly scene and give a brief kind of moment of quite intense emotion that makes me feel well, the more I think about this, it doesn't make sense, but I probably just shouldn't think about it that much because I'm just enjoying this emotional wave he's given me. So he's always good at that, which is what I like about his writing.
Yeah, no, I enjoyed that episode and that scene. I think that might actually have been one of the better episodes of this season, although there are quite a few decent ones. Yeah, you're right, that is the main thing he's good at. We've spoken before about Russell T Davis's penchant, I guess, for character or emotion-driven sci-fi, wherein he seems to be very good at finding the emotion he wants and then just shaping the sci-fi around it, which, if you're a hardcore sci-fi fan, probably makes his science fiction seem a bit like he's just making it up as he goes along. But the character stuff normally lands, which means it works as drama, and obviously he's had a lot of success with it.
I mean, that is very much in the spirit of Doctor Who. I mean, Doctor Who always played fast and loose with, I'm talking about in the past with science and things like that. For example, there's, I think I mentioned this in the podcast before, there's an episode called The Twin Dilemma when these mathematical genius twins create a huge section of squares and someone walks in and goes, interesting, if you converted that into equations you'd have enough energy for a small sun. That makes absolutely no sense on so many levels. Is that so it's really quite dumb. So yeah, I mean, the sci-fi in Doctor Who is very much kind of wavy hand, it's there to serve plot. So I'm happy with Rusty Davis doing that because he does land the emotion. I guess if I was to have a criticism of this season, which is possibly why I say I preferred the previous one, is that I felt it lacked the huge swing, big emotional moment. Basically, the last season, I really liked the ending with Ruby meeting her long lost mum. I thought that's classic Russell T Davies. Big emotional moment, makes everyone feel happy and warm. Brought a tear to my eye. I just felt he didn't quite reach those heights this season, or again some of the classic ones from the like Rose meeting her dad in the first season in the Father's Day episode, and some other big moments like that. So I guess my criticism of here is not that there's sort of hand wavy emotion that just totally like rides roughshod over science. It's just that he's done that better in the past.
I mean, at this point, obviously, he is very much competing hard against his own legacy. On the other hand, I do think last year's finale, apart from a couple of scenes at the end with Ruby, which, as you mentioned, were good, kind of fell flat. So, honestly, I preferred this year's in most other ways. And to be honest, the final scenes of this year's finale with the Doctor, spoilers, I guess, although these spoilers have been widely reported in the news, so it's been 2 or 3 weeks at this stage. Sorry.
I feel at this point we will just talk without concern for spoiler.
Yes, the scenes at the end of the finale in which the Doctor regenerates, all to save one child. I thought did land, but I felt sadness watching that. I felt they did very much provide the emotional kick I want for the ending of a Russell T Davies finale.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. That was a big emotional moment, yeah. And there was some very good, interesting dynamics with both having Belinda and Ruby back. Yeah, actually, that's one of the things I liked about the ending as well, the final episode, that they again had those big emotional moments in it as well, so they were there.
Yeah, I mean, it was good to see Ruby again. I felt like Belinda, who I did enjoy in the 6 opening episodes of the season, got slightly boned in the 2-part finale, but she spent the first part as a brainwashed wife and the second part locked in a box, which seemed a bit harsh. I mean, I'm aware that there are rumours spattering the internet about rewrites and changes and last-minute alterations to that finale, so who knows. But on the version we got, I felt like Belinda could have maybe had a bit more to do.
Yeah, this is my biggest criticism. I did like Belinda as a character, and they also totally changed her character in the finale, in that she was this headstrong woman who wanted to get back to her family, and in the opening episode there's a whole thing about her not wanting to be a sort of traditional girlfriend to this guy she's dating and kind of wants her own life. And then I know there's plot reasons for this, but then she becomes like basically just a mum obsessed with her baby, and her sort of main motivation seems to disappear and she kind of gets sidelined a bit. So I suppose that was one thing that I felt that that quite interesting character who had a good dynamic got seemingly rewritten in the final episodes to something that wasn't as good as what it had been before, which I didn't like so much.
Yeah, I kind of felt that was a shame, but there we go. As I say, Ruby's stuff in the last episode was quite good. And also Ruby had a sort of spotlight episode in the middle of the season. What was it called? Lucky Day.
Yeah.
Dealing with her post-Doctor life, which was actually really good. It was very reminiscent of, it was kind of reminiscent of the Ruby spotlight from last year, 73 Yards, and it was also kind of reminiscent of the Russell T Davies series Years and Years, about, depressing political events in the modern world. And, clearly it's a flavour he does well. His 1 episode a year in Doctor Who to express his political anger.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, there's quite a lot of politics. I found this season there's the opening episode with the Planet of the Incels. It's not subtle, but it does make a point. I suppose it is a show aimed at children or teenagers, largely. There was obviously points about racism and segregation in the cartoon one that's set in 50s America. So that was also interesting. Yeah, the fact they actually went there, and things like that, with the Black Doctor getting involved in the politics of segregation.
I do think it was also positive, though, that they did do a story where the first Black Doctor gets to deal with black culture in a more positive way than just experiencing racism. There was the episode set in the barber shop, which I thought was a good one.
In Nigeria, yes, in fact, that could be my favourite episodes of this season. Partly because, it's really interesting. First one I think they've done in Nigeria, really interesting to have a sort of wide range of black actors and black characters, obviously playing on the iconic status of the barber shop in that culture as a social hub. And also, I always like stories about stories, is one of the things I'm kind of nerdy about, and Doctor Who's quite good at that, exploring the power of stories. And again, Russell T Davies is also something I feel he's very interested in. And that episode about the origins of myths and legends and the truth behind stories and story weavers, looping in story deities from a whole range of cultures, from Anansi to Norse mythology and things like that. I thought I actually got a lot of really interesting things into a good episode that also had a kind of locked room mystery to it that had some big ideas but was also exciting as well. So I think that could be my one favourite of the season, but that's not to say there weren't other good ones.
Yeah, honestly, between that and Lucky Day and the Lux animated one, those are probably the 3 favourites for me. I'm not going to bother picking an overall favourite. I mean, the Interstellar Song Contest was good as well. It was a strong season, to be honest. There was a lot of good, enjoyable episodes, and there was nothing bad, which, as I've said earlier, somewhat snarkily is, impressive and rare for Doctor Who.
Yeah, especially in the the last few years.
Yeah, I think this was probably the best season since Capaldi, which, again, some might say is damning with faint praise, but for me, probably the best season since Capaldi.
Yeah. No, I can stand by that. Definitely. It was exciting. Yeah, I like the Midnight one, or the Return to Midnight. episode. Yeah, I thought that was very good. Quite scary. Again, the classic Doctor Who low-budget horror type thing. Again, something Doctor Who does very well.
Yeah, that one was interesting. Maybe didn't quite come together and sing at the end for me, but I did enjoy it.
Yeah, I thought it was good. And as you said, yeah, the song contest one was good. I enjoyed it. I kind of felt with the song contest one, I kind of wanted it to go bigger and sillier, but actually it turned out to be quite dark in places. Again, yeah, the sort of plot line explored oppression, mass death and destruction. I don't know if he's trying to talk in a slightly more coded way than he normally does about gay rights and depression that gay people have faced throughout history, but maybe I'm just saying like, oh yeah, Eurovision Song Contest episode, we're going to talk about gay history. Maybe I'm just putting two and two together and ending up with Rainbow, but I kind of felt tonally that episode maybe wasn't quite in line with the tone of Eurovision, but it was still a good episode.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I think, if anything, there was a bit of an intentional swerve there, in that, I think he must be vaguely aware. I mean, to be fair to the actual credits, Davis didn't technically write that episode, it was Juno Dawson. But I'm sure there's a certain expectation of, there's a Eurovision Song Contest episode during a Russell T Davies season. It's going to be, relentless, screaming camp silliness. And therefore, by going for something a bit darker and more subdued, there's a certain level of twist.
That is a good point. Actually, yeah, that is a good point of subverting expectations. So, yeah, that is very interesting, yeah. Colour me convinced by your argument, yeah.
And also, Juno Dawson did do a good job on that episode. It was very much in line with the rest of the season. She clearly got the sort of Russell T Davies tone off pretty well. It fitted in seamlessly.
Yeah. It's one of those ones where I was surprised that it wasn't actually written by him, maybe because of the subject matter as well. Yeah, I mean, overall good writing this season. I think one of the things that I overall found disappointing about it, which is, this is nowhere a criticism of Davis and his writing, is that basically I just wanted more, really. It kind of made me miss the season 1 to 12 13 episode arcs where there's like several double parters and meatier stories, like the one where Ruby meets the podcaster and has a relationship post returning to normal life after being with the Doctor. It was a good episode, but I kind of felt the plot moved very quickly. It really would have been better as a two-parter. I mean, I know he's only given 8 episodes and it can't have two-parters, and obviously you got your 2-part finale. It just eats up too much time, but I felt like that one did cannon through the plot quite quickly, so it would have been better had he been given some breathing room in the two-parter. But that's just my opinion, separate from the reality of making the show.
Realistically, also, they're not going to give a two-parter to the story that doesn't have the Doctor in it.
Yeah, I suppose there's that. Well, maybe there'd be more Doctor in it had there been. I mean, we're just getting into hypotheticals now.
Well, yeah, that's
I guess the point I'm trying to make is that I kind of wanted just a bit more of this. That's what it's good. So I wanted more. Like, again, like the Rusty Davis seasons that I really liked. The 3rd season or the 1st season and things like that. Some of my favourites.
Well, yeah, I think 8 episodes never feels like quite enough, or certainly it never feels as good, especially when we're doing one-season companions in the way that Davis clearly enjoys. The trouble is, 8 episodes, with 2 of them always being a two-parter, never feels like quite enough time. I enjoyed Ruby, but I didn't feel like we quite got enough time with Ruby to completely bond with her, and I felt the same with Belinda this year.
Yeah, which is why it's good that Ruby was back, but yeah, I kind of wanted more Belinda for my money.
Yeah, honestly, with this few episodes, part of me would rather have had either 2 years of Ruby or 2 years of Belinda rather than trying to do both. But obviously, I guess Davis had his 2 years and wanted to get through as much stuff as possible.
Yeah, which is fair enough. And all building to, I guess, his big finale.
Yeah.
Resurrecting not one but 2 classic villains. I suppose the main villain is the Rani, another Time Lord who has been rumoured to come back for a while, like one of the few classic villains not to be brought back. In fact, pretty much the only classic villains, certainly who's been in more than one story that they've not brought back, are the 2 villains they brought back this time. First the Rani and Omega. And also going back to what I was just saying about how the old Doctor Who really played fast and loose with science, one of the things I did like about this is that in the story of Omega from the 70s and that he's trapped in the antimatter universe and trying to get back to our reality, but I guess they feel that even there's enough knowledge amongst the public about what antimatter is that's drifted out over the last sort of 40 years, or at least amongst sci-fi nerds, things like that maybe Davis felt that would have just come across as flatantly ridiculous and unbelievable, so they changed him. He's sort of trapped in a sort of dungeon dimension where stories run rampant and things like that, and it's a bit more hand-wavy, magic-y, but I actually kind of liked that like, rather than it being like, no, he's literally in the antimatter universe, it's more that he's trapped in some nightmare dimension that he's trying to escape, which actually, although a subtle thing, I felt that was a good change for that character and kind of addressed the kind of ridiculous science from the 70s Doctor Who.
Well, bringing in a bit more of that sort of fantasy magic stuff is something Davis has been doing over the last couple of years, so yeah.
But it really worked.
Good way to tie it back in. If anything, it's a bit disappointing that we've reached the end of Gatwa's run and we didn't get a kind of big ending to that stuff, but then again, maybe that is because it sounds like his run may have been been slightly curtailed. But anyway, who knows with speculation. But yeah, no, I liked the villain stuff at the end. The Varney was good fun. Did feel kind of similar to the John Sim Master stuff at the end of season 3, but it's been like nearly 20 years since that was aired, so you could probably do something vaguely similar without it being too stupid. And yeah, both the actors were good. I enjoyed Elise Dobson especially, actually. She was clearly having fun. I was vaguely glad that she got to survive at the end.
Yeah. No, they were both good. They did make the Rani a bit more like the Master, just like another evil Time Lord, which is, considering we've had a woman Master now as well, made the characters more similar. Although there were definitely moments when they captured the essence, I think, of the Rani character, which is more that the Rani is like a scientist who just sees humans as beneath the way that we might see a mouse, things like that. Like, we think nothing as a society of experimenting on mice, carving them up, shoving things in their brains just to see what happens, and things like that. And that's kind of how the Rani as a Time Lord relates to humans, and it kind of really just show the distance between humans and Time Lords, which can be hard to convey when they're all just played by Homo sapien actors on sound stages, and it needs to be brought about through good writing, which again Rusty Davis occasionally captures that really well. Think about the Bad Wolf stuff. There were definitely a few moments when you got sort of classic Rani showed through this sort of complete disregard for people as kind of like, what, you're crying over the ants? What's the point in crying over the ants? We're Time Lords, we've got serious stuff to do. Which also shows why the Doctor is like a great character, because he really cares about everyone and doesn't, considering he stands at the top of this enormous evolutionary mountain, just staring down and lording it over everyone else. Again, yeah, some classic Who themes running through this.
Yeah, I mean, the Varney, if anything, got weirdly shuffled aside in some ways, but their scenes were good fun, and after having them mentioned basically every year since about the late 2000s, in some ways, I'm glad they finally did it.
It's done now, we can stop speculating with it.
Yeah, I mean, as you say, he's probably at this point kind of run out of classic Who villains who have been substantially used, so maybe we'll have to come up with some new things, guys. New things, come on.
These characters of the gods that have been run through the Ncuti Gatwa season, that's new as far as I can aware.
Yeah.
So, although what he's done is he's weaved various classic villains into the pantheon of the gods, such as Sect, the god of death from the previous season, who's from Pyramids of Mars, and the Toymaker, who's from a Patrick Troughton era adventure, I believe, possibly Hartnell. Anyway, so he's created this pantheon of evil gods and weaved in, the existing Who villains into them, as well as creating new ones, which is again something generally he's adding to the annuals of Doctor Who lore, which is good and things like that. And especially now they're pretty much out of class. I mean, there are a few classics, but they are definitely going down into the obscure things. Again, like Sect, the god of death was only ever in one adventure before. Toymaker as well has only been in one adventure. So the Rani's only been in two. I think Omega was two, possibly three at most. But then I kind of also missed the Daleks as well. I mean, I respect what he's done, like no Daleks, Cybermen or Master. They've been done a lot, but yeah, maybe next season we have the Daleks.
Yeah, no, I understand the desire to give the Daleks a rest, although on some level it is a shame that Ncuti Gatwa's gone now and he never got to meet the Daleks. But hey, never mind, there's always Big Finish.
Yeah, or the 70th special or whatever. And I guess the final thing to discuss is probably the finale.
Or two, yeah, in which, well, first Jodie Whittaker makes a comeback to ease Ncuti Gatwa out of the series.
Which was nice.
Which was pleasant. I've seen some people really going for it on this, really like, it's so great to finally see Jodie Whittaker with good writing. I felt that was the greatest moment the character had. I felt Russell Davies did more with that character in that one scene than Chris Chibnall did in 3 years, which I thought was a bit much.
Yeah.
It was a nice scene. It was a nice bit of nuanced pathos on that character, which, yes, she didn't always get, but let's keep it calm, guys. Let's keep it chill.
Yeah, but then after that, obviously, as we've alluded to, Ncuti has departed the stage through regeneration, as they do, and
Billy Piper rocks up,
which speculated online, and I was like, that's never going to happen, and obviously it did. I mean, obviously this is classic Doctor Who. Anything could happen. David Tennant's come back now. Billy Piper's the Doctor. People are speculating, is this a Bad Wolf related thing or something else? Obviously, like all Doctor Who things, especially these like mad end of season twists, it all come down to how they pay it off, what the story is, what the emotional beats that Rusty Davis wants to hit with this. So I guess it's difficult to judge at this point, but my main feel is I feel like, can we start just revolving around the same few mid-aughts nostalgia points, bringing back Tennant, bringing back Billy Piper? It just makes you feel, again, let's do something new, move forwards, let's do something new.
Yeah, my opinion's basically the same. I'm sure Davis can write a nice, nostalgic, emotionally resonant special in which Billy Piper, whatever this character is, meets the the David Tennant 14th Doctor who's still alive, and I'm sure it'll be watchable. But especially considering we had Whisker regenerating into Tennant not that long ago, it does only increase my desire for something new.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, maybe it'll just be like a one-off Christmas special that would be good that ends with regenerating into whoever the next proper long stint Doctor will be. But again, this is, Doctor Who criminology at this point. We don't know, and we're here to review the story, and it was at least a surprising twist that caught me by surprise and set up some interesting things. So we'll see how well that can be paid off.
Yeah, and I don't know. I had a very brief Google about what's meant to be next, and as far as I can see, no one knows. They've commissioned a new spin-off series on CBBS. We've got The War Between the Land and the Sea coming at some point, but in terms of the next season of actual Doctor Who, no one seems to have a clue.
There was no confirmed Christmas special for this year, I think, as well.
No confirmed Christmas special, no confirmed anything. We will have to wait and see, which I gather was one of the reasons, according to the multiple rumours, that Ncuti Gatwa may have left, due to the lack of any clear idea of what was happening next. But hey-ho, there we go. We'll probably be back with Doctor Who at some point in the future.
Finally, this episode, we will be discussing the second and final season of Andor. Rebellion is spreading as many separate groups challenge the Empire. Meanwhile, Cassian Andor and Luther Rael are investigating a secret major project the Empire is working on. We have seen this complete season on Disney+. Nick, what did you think of it?
Yeah, this was another very good show. Much like the first year, it took maybe a short while to get going, to really hook me in. But by episode 6 or so, I was completely with it, yeah. I thought the whole back half of this season, the whole run from episode 6 to 12 was an absolute treat. Just every episode, incredibly tense, incredibly exciting, incredibly me on the front of my sofa going, oh my god, what's going to happen next? So yeah, no, really enjoyed this. As ever, the main appeal is the nuanced, complex portrayal of what it's really like to live under and rebel against the Galactic Empire. It's good stuff.
Yeah. No, I love this show. I thought it was excellent. Yeah, it's a slow build. When it gets going, it really gets going, as you said. It's a wide story covering a lot of characters. It's got a real like galactic sweep to it, and like it kind of really gets across the complexity of organizing a rebellion and the elements of it, but also makes electric drama from that. I kind of like that Cassian himself is sort of a lot of the times on the edge of the drama or adjacent to it, because he's not like the great hero of the rebellion. He's just one people among many working to spread the rebellion, things like that. Obviously he gets involved in the main plot. The main plot kind of comes very related to him at the end, especially as it pretty much finishes just before his film Rogue One starts. So yeah, he does come a bit more central, but it really does get across that like rebellions are made by lots of people working together in small ways, each doing their part, and it's like broad tapestry. And that I felt was really good, interesting storytelling approach.
Yeah, it is interesting how much just, not portraying your hero as if they're the messianic centre of everything makes this show feel so complex and different. Because, you'd think that would be fairly obvious, but it's a trap that a lot of TV shows and movies and modern genre media seems to struggle not to fall into.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. And it's a real ensemble. I think it was helped by the first season that people responded very well to the supporting cast members, such as, Luther and Ray, again, played by Stellan Skarsgård, who's brilliant, and obviously does, a real portrayal of this, a man who's been deep undercover for years, working on this project, and it's kind of, he's become twisted and he's done horrible things. He's killed people, he's lost all his sense of himself, but he's kind of got this vague ideal he's working towards. He's definitely a flawed character, but there's a lot of good stuff about him. We're going to probably have to just drop spoilers broadly. This did come out a while ago to discuss, but the episode especially about him being caught and then leading up to his death, I felt was really powerful and moving and was a great bit of television.
Yeah, I think that is the one episode which Cassian Andor literally did not appear in a single second of, and yet it's one of the best episodes, which says something about, as they say, the deep bench on this show.
Mm-hmm.
And the character, was it Clea, his assistant, who gets more and more to do as this season goes along, after I think being quite a comparatively minor character in the first season. She's a great character. She really comes to the fore by the end. And that's again one of the strengths of it, but almost any character is good enough to lead here. Or at least a lot of the characters are. Yeah.
I mean, they really did expand the bench, things like that, to everything like sort of Mon Mothma's friends in stuff got developed more, various members of the rebellion, again because it's got this broad sweep to it as well, and some of the villains, a bit more about the ISB and their operations, things like that, as this sort of galactic conspiracy unfolds.
The amount of time they genuinely dedicated to the inner runnings of the Galactic Empire was impressive, and also impressively actually sad and horrible, and gives you a feeling for the grim way these things unfold. And the sheer scope of the cast, as you say, is amazing. And, a rare example of a modern streaming show which, well, firstly, actually got 12 episodes, and secondly, actually needed them.
Yeah, exactly. Again, and it's like, it's not particularly fast-paced, especially in the early bits, but it does really build up this rich thing. I mean, it reminded me a bit, again, of the political podcast Slow Burn, which explores a political story again and its machinations slowly in all the different ways that, like, small individual people contribute to the whole by doing one small thing that turns out to be significant. And actually, I mean, that's history. Slow Burn's discussing, but this uses that in a similar way to talk about this fantasy sci-fi story of, like, the small things people do and how it all kind of comes together. I mean, the kind of main character of this season is the rebellion. This is the story of how the rebellion goes from groups of people doing things here and there to a coordinated opposition to the Empire. I mean, it starts with, like, Andor stealing a TIE fighter, taking it to a group, and the two groups are, like, fighting each other over a misunderstanding, which shows you how divided the rebellion is. And then by the end, they've established the base on Yavin. There's a more military and political operation for the rebellion, and they're moving towards, obviously, the first film. So I think the main character of this is the rebellion. It's their story, and having that focus really worked.
Well, yeah, the nuance of it here is that the rebellion is a broad church, and they're not all just a bunch of good goodies working towards the same goal. There's a lot of people pulling in different directions. There's factions, there's infighting. There's the fact that, a lot of people in the main rebellion, as it becomes more organised and respectable, seem to increasingly have a certain level of contempt for the Stellan Skarsgård character due to the grim lengths he's had to go to get them this far. And it's all just a bit, it's nuanced. It's a word that I will be apparently wearing out during this review.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. And, but it feels like, again, something from our world. I mean, they don't quite talk about it in these terms in this way, but you get the feeling that Luthen Rail is an extremist or a fundamentalist rebel. I mean, it doesn't make sense when you put it in that way. It's like when people tried to describe what the First Order was, as people describe them as, like, extremist Imperials. But it sort of doesn't make sense when you talk about it that way, but that's the sense you get without them using, like, glib or cliche phrases, that this guy is ultra committed, doesn't care about anything else, including people and what he does, but he's got this sort of higher sense of ideals that he's working towards. But that's what you need to make a rebellion actually work. I mean, this is kind of like, this show is basically kind of going beneath the surface of what you broadly see in the original Star Wars films, which are a hero's journey story about Luke becoming a magical knight and killing an evil sorcerer. Great story, love it, shaped my childhood. But the rebellion is kind of there just to have big action scenes and space battles and stuff. But this is really like kind of like, so how did this work? How would it actually function and come into being and things like that? And that detail actually is really interesting, at least for political and sci-fi nerds like me, even though it might sound boring on paper. But then, similar to what we were saying about Rusty Davis just now, like, it's just how you tell the story, not what the story is. And they tell the story really well.
Well, yeah, but it's just getting the right person for the job and it just coming together. I mean, when I watched Rogue One, I didn't look at the character of Andor and think, yes, him, get that man a spin-off. But, you get the right person and they've got the right story, and it's one of the best things they've done in the whole Star Wars universe, or at least certainly the extended Star Wars Disney Plus universe.
Yeah, it's definitely my favourite of the TV shows they've done, and yeah, definitely probably one of the best bits of Star Wars media in quite a long time, certainly leaving aside the video games. It feels very much, like informed by the politics of our world. I mean, I'm not the only person to make the comparisons between the works of political philosopher Hannah Arendt and this show and Star Wars more broadly. There was a long article on our website that I wrote about this, but other people have done YouTube videos on the topic as well. But it have a lot of those points, like there's a lot about propaganda, especially how the propaganda against the planet of Gorm, which is kind of the main plot of the middle of the show. That's really interesting about how they, the Empire creates these villains so that they can focus public attention on them to achieve their goals. Yeah, certainly the ISB characters, this sort of secret security operation is very much, this is how tyranny works, and this is how these secret police work, and these sort of complex structures that hide the source of power, but it's in the shadows, monitoring, controlling, enforcing the will of the leader. There's even an Eichmann character, a man who's a mid-level functionary, not particularly talented or imaginary, but seems to get some kind of personal satisfaction for being a tiny part of this big kind of oppressive bureaucratic machine. There's really a lot going on in this. The more you dig into it, and there's more ways you could look at it, certainly, through that political framework. But that it just means I like it even more, because that's what I'm here for, really.
Well, yeah, it's a good show, if only because it can work on a number of levels. You know, I didn't know any about stuff, and I still had a good time.
I mean, ultimately, it's got drama and, great storytelling and great characters. I mean, you can dig into, like, the nature of rebellion and the nature of tyranny, and it will become just a bit, I don't know, heavy-handed or a bit pretentious. I mean, this is what goes wrong with sometimes with some takes on Batman, for example. They're more like, what is the nature of Batman? What is the nature of Gotham? And it's like, no, tell us a cool story with, like, good characters and good plot. That comes first, and then you can have your other stuff. And I think I might have even said this in our review of the first season of Andor, but that's what Andor does. I mean, ultimately, it's just a tense thriller with good characters.
Yeah, but I've seen people post online, it's like, oh my god, how did they sneak this extreme left-wing text past Disney? And I'm pretty sure a lot of people are just going to watch this and think, hey, story about an evil empire, people fighting the evil empire, hey up, without thinking about any implications of anything. I don't think it's intrinsically, fundamentally, obviously hardcore radical anything. It can just be enjoyed as a fun story about an evil empire, but because it's good, it also has, subtleties and, dare I say it, nuance.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's a lot of debate online about, can you accurately spread an anti-capitalist, anti-imperialist message on a big capitalist platform? Has these ideas now just been co-opted by Disney that they've been turned into entertainment that we watch in the evening? I don't know. Not really sure what to say about that. Kind of yes and kind of no. But I think what this show stands out is that, yeah, it's most people just watch it as entertainment. I think the way that most people engage with it will be basically, and this is a bit of a loaded term I suppose, but to say like this is grown-up Star Wars. I think that's everyone gets. Like, this is a Star Wars show that has a sense of real seriousness to it, and it's not aimed at certainly like children and things like that. I think that's the vibe that people are most engaging with and enjoying it on. It's basically, this is like serious Star Wars.
I think certainly you need a slightly higher, if nothing else, attention span to watch this. Like, I can't imagine a child making it that far through the extended meeting scenes in the opening episodes of this show.
Yeah, exactly. And it's also one of those things that I've basically made myself really pay attention, really focus for this. Like a definite phones away, tablets away. It's one-on-one me and Andor time. And I appreciated the episodes slowly over a long period of time, because I wanted to savour them and enjoy them and, watch one, leave it a couple of days, think about it, watch the next one, enjoy it in that sense. The way that I enjoy a good novel or a sort of complex arty film like Breathless, for example. Not the way I kind of wolf down some other streaming shows. I mean, like, I don't want to mention one now because it'll feel like I'm insulting it. And, there's a place for like just popcorn entertainment. You come home, you sit on, you watch some fights, you unwind after a hard day's work. I'm not complaining about that at all. I enjoy some popcorn entertainment a lot. I've said so on this podcast, but this is just a show that I engage with in a totally different way. And, it's great that I'm doing that in the Star Wars universe, something that's meant a lot to me ever since my childhood.
Yeah, no, I mean, it is, I don't know if it's impressive or brave that they made this, but I do appreciate that they're willing to make this, or at least, I don't know, that they actually let them take it to an ending. It seems like the age of throwing a million shows on Disney Plus might be coming to an end. Like, I don't think there's that much Star Wars stuff scheduled after this, apart from another season of Ahsoka, possibly.
I think they're making another film, possibly about the rebellion.
They may be pivoting back to cinema, yes, having decided that making these multi-million-pound shows just for streaming is not, in fact, making them their money back.
Yeah.
So, yeah, this may well be coming towards the end of the age, but I'm glad we got this out of it and that they actually got to finish it.
Yeah, I mean, it's been popular and well received, so I'm glad that, they clearly, and also even the second season, it's more Andor-y than the first season, to coin a phrase. I mean, I'm also rewatching Arcane now, another one-word A title. And when you watch the second season just after the first season, you become much more aware that they were given more creative freedom to be themselves in the second season. It's more stylized, it's got more slightly abstract moments. And I get the feeling with this as well, people like this. Okay, yeah, we want more nuance, more complexity, more broad tapestry of characters, more slow burn drama, which is good because sometimes things disappear up their own bumholes by being themselves more. But this time, actually, yeah, again, the Andorness really came through and it really worked. I mean, good that it ended. It has a firm ending. Third season probably would maybe just be dragging it out too much. But again, also classic. Yeah, 24 episodes, strong story, good ending. Big thumbs up.
Yeah, I do kind of wish I'd rewatched the first season of Andor, to be honest. There were some Googling to work out who people were. I also kind of found myself wishing I'd rewatched Rogue One as we got towards the end. There was quite a lot of obvious, this is set up for Rogue One stuff, but I felt like I might have appreciated more if I'd actually seen that film since the one time I watched it in the cinema when it first came out.
Yeah, like, for example, I picked up when they name-dropped the Mads Mikkelsen character in one scene, for example.
Yeah, and he's the father of the protagonist in Rogue One, isn't he?
Yeah, exactly, yeah. And the designer of the Death Star. And obviously I did like they brought back the villain from Rogue One to be kind of the big villain in this, to bridge the gap, and obviously that was very good. And he's a proper scary, again, bigwig official in a totalitarian organization that just, abuses and murders people. You know, he's very much the kind of, this guy is a senior SS Gestapo type of the Star Wars world. So yeah, and it was a good villain piece.
Yeah. And there was also a bit where, in one of the later episodes, one of the characters found a gun and held it up and said, "Whose gun is this?" And then someone stepped forward from the crowd and said, "It's mine." And I was like, I cannot remember who you are, but this seems like you must be in Rogue One.
Yeah, I guess that would have worked as well.
I mean, I can remember that they all die at the end of Rogue One, so I did get, the tragic thrust of the final episode or two. That worked fine.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. It landed
Spoilers, sorry.
Yeah. It was that film that we reviewed ages ago and came out ages ago. But yeah, this had a really nice ending. This is a real big spoiler, but I liked how, which generally a twist I wasn't expecting, the very, very last shot of his girlfriend who sort of runs away at one point, revealing that the reason why she ran away is that she was pregnant, and Andor has a child he never knew about. So even though we know that he dies, some part of him lives on. So yeah, and that actually really brought like a little tear to my eye right at the end. Just a really sweet, subtle moment, just like the very last shot. His girlfriend standing there holding a kid, and then I suddenly went, "Oh, ooh, that's clever."
Yeah, weirdly, it mostly reminded me of the similar bit from the end of Black Panther 2.
It is the exact same emotional beat, but it's a good beat.
Yeah.
Works. Yeah, classics never get a start.
So yeah, no, this was great.
Yeah.
They came back, they had a big task to follow it up, and they managed it. Fair enough, guys. Good job.
I really feel if you consume any modern, recent Star Wars media, it's got to be this.
Yeah, honestly, I might give it a year or two and then possibly rewatch this, then Rogue One, or maybe Rogue One, then this. I haven't decided which way round would be better.
Do them in plot order.
Okay, and that was Modern Fantasy Violence. Thank you very much for listening. As ever, if you have enjoyed this podcast, then consider going to the website at modernfantasyviolence.com and enjoying our range of essays and past episodes. And then why not go to your podcast platform of choice and leave us a nice 5-star review. Thank you so much.
You can also find more from us on social media. Search for MFV Podcast on Twitter and Blue Sky. You can also find us on Facebook by searching for Moderate Fantasy Violence. You can find me on Blue Sky, Instagram and TikTok by searching for Alastair Ball. You can find my writing at redtrainblog.com, and you can find my theatre reviews at everythingtheatre.com. Also, if you go to our website, you can see my essay on Star Wars and Hannah Arendt.
And I've been Nick Bryan. You can find me on social media as nickbryan.com, usually with a dot, but with the word dot on Instagram. You can also find me on the internet at nickbryan.com. And thank you to anyone who backed my recent Kickstarter for Sold number 2. We're just finishing the comic now. It'll be with you as soon as we can. Meanwhile, we'll be back with you in a couple of weeks, when we will be covering the new Predator spin-off film Killer of Killers on Disney+, and the second season of exciting dystopian mushroom zombie show The Last of Us. See you in 2 weeks for that. Bye-bye.
Bye.